I'm Roy Scarborough, president of the board of Friends of the Hannon Library, and I'm here to welcome the Zoomers out there and everybody in attendance and apologize for our 15-minute delay as we were dealing with some technology here. So again, welcome to those attendant. Thank you for coming. At the start of our college events, we have a tradition that we observe, and that is the reading of the land acknowledgement, which is acknowledging the historic and continuing presence of the Native American peoples who lived here. So I'm going to read this exactly as we always do.
More technology issues. I think we have to hit.
We've got a glitch.
We need to hit record. Oh, it is. Okay.
Okay.
I was like, that's
Here's our
wonderful.
tradition, and we're always glad to do that. The Friends of the Hannon Library take this moment to acknowledge that Southern Oregon University is located within the ancestral homelands of the Shasta, Takelma, and Lackawanna peoples who lived here since time immemorial. These tribes were displaced during the Euro-American colonization, the gold rush, and the armed conflict in 1851 and 1856. In the 1850s, discovery of gold and settlement brought thousands of Euro-Americans to their lands, leading to warfare, epidemics, starvation, and villages being burned. In 1853, the first of several treaties were signed, confederating these tribes and others together who would then be referred to as the Rogue River Tribe. These treaties ceded most of their homelands to the United States, and in return, they were guaranteed a permanent homeland reserved for them at the end of the Rogue River Wars in 1856. These tribes and many other tribes from Western Oregon were removed to the Siletz Reservation and the Grand Ronde Reservation. Today, the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde Community of Oregon and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians are living descendants of the Takelma, Shasta, and Lagawa peoples of this area. The Friends of the Hannon Library encourage you to learn about the land you reside in and to join us in advocating for the inherent sovereignty of Indigenous people. One more thing I'd like to add is that the Cow Creek Band of the Umpqua Indians in Roseburg are also descendants of the Takelma people. Okay. We are very fortunate and honored to have as our featured speaker, author Ellie Alexander. Ellie has published 250,000 of her cozy mystery novels. And in the last 17 years, or last 9 years, I got that backwards, she has published 17 novels set in Ashland, centered around a bake shop, I think on a plaza. So, and these novels have titles like, cute titles. Another one, Bites the Crust, Live and Let Pie, Muffin But the Truth. Ellie has been described as a voracious storyteller and a believer in the power of stories to transform us. If you go to Ellie's website, you'll see that she offers writing, coaching, and story development, and those opportunities are available to people. The cozy mystery I want to know is how many of us Ashlanders has Ellie killed off? Who will be the next body retrieved from the upper duck pond? Well, with that, I'm going to welcome Ellie.
Thanks so much. Yay. I'm going to make sure my phone is on because I just remembered that in the height of that. Yeah. Good. Yay. Well, is the sound good this way? Yeah. You're okay. Is this good? Test, test. Is that better? Okay, yay. I'm so excited to be here and, somebody might die tonight. Let's throw it out there, like fictionally speaking, of course, but, if you come to any of my talks, you will know that, I'm always on the hunt for ideas, so beware. Tonight, right? There's a dog involved sometimes. Tonight I thought we would talk kind of about the modern mystery. That was the theme of the talk. And before we go into sort of the evolution of the mystery series and why these books continue to resonate with readers, in my opinion, at least, I thought we would go back to my evolution and where I started as a writer. So my 30th novel was just published in January. And out of those 30 novels, 28 of them have been mysteries. And this mystery genre in particular is called the cozy. And I wrote my first cozy when I was in second grade. My penmanship was much better, I would have to tell you that. There is absolutely no plot. And you will see at the end of this page turner that I was predisposed to write the cozy. Now, I think it's better if we have sound effects because we have to up sort of the corny factor of this. So, you know, kind of when I go like this, if we could all go, ooh, let's practice. Okay, ready? Ooh. And maybe if I go like this, it's like, okay, yeah, that's gonna help. Okay, so this is titled The House on the Hill, circa late 1970s, okay? My name is Katie and Amy is my sister. We live in London. The date is 1973, November 16th. I am 13 and my sister is 10. You're feeling the tension already, right? I mean, what a hook. What a hook for a book. I mean, you're already in the story. We know their names and that they live in London. Amy and I were going camping Saturday, and Saturday came at last. Mom helped us pack and we left. It was foggy that day and we rode our bikes past the bridges and the house. Suddenly we were in the woods and it was dark. There we go. That's right. That's right. Bump, bump, bump. My bike has a flat tire, I said to Amy. She stopped her bike and we started to walk. And then I saw a big hill. And at the top, there was a mansion. Ooh. Yes. Well, at least a haunted one. We went up to the door and knocked on the door. Nothing happened. I opened it slowly and went in. Bang, it shut. Cobwebs. This is a great line, I feel like, for second grade too. Cobwebs swept across our faces. We went upstairs and we went into a room and saw a bed and the door closed behind us. We saw another, spelling so another, bed, table, and 2 chairs and some food that we ate and we tried to go to sleep. In the morning, we looked around. The last place we looked was the basement. It was not too scary. We found a bicycle repair kit and some other things, and we hurried upstairs. Cobwebs were all over us. We went outside and we saw some graves. We took the kit and we fixed my bike, and then we took the kit and left on the steps and rode past the house and past the bridges and rode home, but we rode fast. Oops. Oh yeah. I think what that sums up is this idea of the cozy, right? Because not a lot happens. There's some details, there's some spooky stuff, you know, a basement, some cobwebs, a grave. But at the end of the day, they find a bicycle repair kit and ride off happily ever after. And one of the things that I think is true about the mystery genre is this is kind of what happens. Mysteries are almost like modern day fairy tales. And in the real world, we don't always get so much closure. In a mystery, we know that there are going to be a finite number of suspects. There's going to be a body to start, probably a little more than what happened in my first foray into writing, but there's going to be a body. There are going to be some suspects. The community is going to come together at the end, and hopefully our intrepid sleuth is going to solve the crime and the killer will be brought to justice, which I think is one of the reasons that these stories continue to live on. If you think about the founder sort of the mystery, like who comes to mind? Anyone have somebody that right away they're like, this author is it for me? Poirot, yes, Agatha Christie. So I think of Agatha Christie as the grandmother to the modern mystery. And she and Dorothy L. Sayers in the 1930s started what they called the Detective Club. Dorothy even went so far as creating a rules of fair play. So any writer who belonged to the club had to swear this oath. Okay, so this is what Dorothy L. Sayers wrote in 1930. Do you promise that your detectives shall well and truly detect the crimes presented to them using those wits, which it may please you to bestow upon them, not placing any reliance nor making use of divine revelation? I love this one. Feminine intuition, mumbo jumbo, jiggery pokery. I don't even know what jiggery pokery is. Coincidence or an act of God. So if you were in their club back in the 1930s, you had to swear by these rules. And if we fast forward to today's mystery, we still follow those same rules. And I think that's one of the other reasons that these books continue to resonate, not just my books, but the mystery in general, because you as the reader have the same opportunity to solve the crime as any of our sleuths. If we as writers have done our job correctly, all of the clues are embedded in the story. At the end of the book, there can't be this reveal. There can't be, let's go back to it, jiggery pokery, where the sleuth wakes up and is like, oh, I had a dream and now I know who the killer is. We prescribe to the same rules as mystery writers, which then gives readers this clue to figure out throughout. Hopefully, I'm sending you off on red herrings and dark alleys that you're going to end up, at a dead end, but the base of those rules remain true, which I think is great. Now, if we're talking about reading in general, especially because, as we mentioned at the beginning with some of these titles, they're funny, they're punny. If you pick up a book called Muffin But the Truth, I think you know that you're not like getting into Tolstoy or something, right? But the bad news right now, let's start with that first. According to a survey by the Jenkins Group, 33% of high school graduates will never pick up a book again in their lifetime. It's even worse because 42% of college graduates report that they never read another book after college. And I think that's a staggering number. And I wonder if some of that is because as education paths, we are doing a lot of serious reading and we're doing a lot of reading about trauma, which is so important. I read the gamut. I read everything from nonfiction to literary fiction to stuff that's really heavy and dark. And then I also need some palate cleansers. And I feel like the mystery is a perfect palate cleanser in between, where we are also encouraging young readers to have a little bit of fun in their reading, like do the serious work, do the heavy work, and then take a little break with like a little bit of a muffin and find your way back around. Okay, so that's the sad news. But the good news is the mystery in particular really had a moment during the height of the pandemic. And I often wonder if that's because we were spending so much time on our couches, like doing physical jigsaw puzzles. And we decided like, oh, our brains need to do this work again. Or if there's also a level of escapism that these books bring to people, that you feel like, okay, if I'm going to take off to Ashland for a little while, I'm going to follow a pastry chef around as she solves a crime and makes some delicious things in her kitchen, that you can just totally check out of the real world for a moment that you're in. According to last year's book sales, there are two top genres in all of fiction. Mystery is number 2. Any guesses to what's number 1? Romance. Romance is number 1. Mystery is number 2. Last year, mysteries brought in $730 million in traditional book sales. So that's taking up a giant piece of the mystery pie. And it's not just books too. I think mystery's having a moment in television again. We're seeing a lot of this golden age resurgence. If anyone watched The Knives Out, there are now 2 in that soon-to-be trilogy. Only Murders in the Building. We're just seeing this resurgence of interest in the mystery. And I think there are probably lots of layers why that's happening. And I know for myself, as someone who writes a lot of these fun light mysteries, I take my work seriously, even though I am writing about a pastry chef who, meanders her way all around Ashland with these crimes that she is in no way, shape, or form equipped to solve. I got my start mystery writing because I grew up in a very reading-centric family. My dad was an English teacher and taught Shakespeare. My mom was a school therapist, and every weekend when I was growing up, we would go to my local library. And my dad had me coming back with stacks of the classics. He had me quoting sonnets and soliloquies at a very young age, which at the time I did not appreciate so much. But now in hindsight, I definitely am so glad for that background. My mom was a prolific mystery reader, so she had me reading Dorothy L. Sayers, Agatha Christie. In fact, the summer that I turned 13, I took it upon myself to read all of Agatha Christie's works over the entire summer. I know. And somehow, I was still alive at the end of that. I read everything I could get my hands on. I was writing a lot of things like this. Oops. A lot of just really bad fiction that will never see the light of day. And I think that balance of having parents who had such different reading styles really helped inform my writing. The same goes for food. My dad was the kind of baker that on the weekend, he would spend 8 hours crafting like a magnificent chocolate mocha almond buttercream torte with homemade apple preserves. And, he would hand pipe it. My mom was like your classic Betty Crocker baker. She would make a chocolate cake and it would be lopsided and kind of funky, but it would always taste delicious. And those experiences of being in this very sensory world in the kitchen with them, and then in my reading life, really helped develop my skills as a writer. I, all through my middle school and early high school years, would give my dad all of my essays or papers or anything that I was working on, and he would edit them for me. And I would think that whatever I had written was going to just be a masterpiece, that probably my English teacher would be ready to shower me with praise at the end of it. And I would get feedback back from my dad, and my paper would just be bloody with his red pen, just so many edits, so many things that he had suggestions and feedback on strengthening. And when I went to college, I minored in creative writing and I got my degree in speech therapy. And I remember my first creative writing class, I had turned in a paper, a piece of creative fiction, and my professor had these lovely things to say about story development and the characters and settings and things like that. And her very last line item was, and this is stuck in my brain for so many years, you need to become intimately acquainted with the comma. So I called my dad back up and I was like, how would you feel about breaking out your editing pen again? I'm ready for you. And to this day, he will often provide feedback and give me, some ideas on how I might strengthen my writing. And I think as a writer, it's so important early on to learn that we need a whole village and a community, much like we find in these mystery series, to help us strengthen our writing, to being open to feedback and suggestions. I will say I write for multiple publishing houses, and I have decided that I don't have to become intimately acquainted with the comma anymore, because one publishing house will have a full set of standards that they go by. When I was working on 2 series early on in my career, I would have these style guides, and one publisher would have the commas, every single time they were using the Oxford comma, and then the other publishing house would have something different. So now I've decided that I'm never going to become intimately acquainted with the comma, and I'm just fine with that. But all through my early years after I had graduated from college, I didn't know what I would do with a creative writing degree, which is why I minored in that. I started working in speech therapy. I worked in an early intervention program and spent a lot of time seeing where speech and language breaks down. And one of the practices that you employ in working in early intervention or any kind of speech therapy is becoming a really active listener. So I would take copious notes on my caseload on clients who I was working with, where their speech was falling apart, ways that we could enhance their language. And anywhere I went, I would have a notebook and just learn how to take those sort of notes. And while I was working in that, I was also dabbling constantly in writing stories that, again, much like The House on the Hill, didn't have a lot of direction or plot or focus. One of them is titled One Dead Toe. So my only vision was that a scene would open in a hospital and somebody would have one dead toe. And that's about as far as that book went. And I'm sure that title would never sell. Although you all will know that if in a future bake shop mystery, somebody has a dead toe, you'll be like, oh, I know where that came from. And I would go and listen to authors talk. I would come to talks like this, and a lot of writers would speak about this idea that the impetus finally for writing the book that they wanted to write was that they had a story within them that they had to tell. And at that stage in my personal development, I thought that that was a fiction, right? I thought that these authors were sort of making that up. They would talk about this idea that they had a story within them that they just absolutely had to tell. And then that they also would have these characters who would come to life and do these things outside of what they had visioned for them. And because I wanted to write a book, I would sort of, take those same notes and pay attention and then think like, well, the only thing that is brimming inside of me is this idea of one dead toe. Like, that's not going to work. So I just kept dabbling and writing stories and stuffing them in boxes in my closet. And in hindsight, and one of the things that I do now when I'm teaching new mystery writers is I think that practice is so important because you're building muscle memory. Like every time you work on a new story as a writer, you're figuring out what works and what doesn't work. You're doing that practice. And it's almost like a physician who has to do years and years of residency. As writers, I think we have to just keep trusting the process, like giving ourselves permission to make a lot of mistakes as we go, to not know where a story is leading us. And I'm super grateful for that time. But what finally prompted the story that was in me that I had to tell was that when I was in my early 30s, my mom was diagnosed with young onset Alzheimer's. And she was in her mid 50s at the time. And so that just sort of turned my whole vision and path for the future upside down. And so I moved home to be closer with her, and I was caring for her. And I was also pregnant with my first and only child at the time. So I was watching, after he was born, I was watching him sort of make all the same gains that she was losing. So he was learning how to walk and talk, and she was losing her speech and losing her motor abilities. And during that whole time, I journaled. I just journaled and journaled and journaled as a way to, have my own sense of self-care at the time. And I would also go to bookstores and libraries and try to find anything I could on young onset Alzheimer's. And at the time, there wasn't a lot on the shelves, which is not true anymore. There's so many great books and nonfiction and fiction that have come out. Still Alice. Did anyone read Lisa Genova's? That's just a beautiful work. Anyway, after my mom died, my first book was a memoir about that experience of losing a mom and becoming a mom at the same time. And I thought, like, okay, I finally understand what these writers were talking about when they were saying, like, I had a story in me that I just had to tell. It was not the story that I wanted to tell. It wasn't the vision that I had of how my first book would end up. But that's probably the thing that I'm the proudest in terms of my 30-book career. And after I had done that, I thought, okay, well, you always wanted to write a book. You've done it, like, and I was doing very serious work in the world too. I had gone to work for the Alzheimer's Association for the state of Oregon. I was running communications and public policy and helping them kind of with putting together communication plans for families. And in the back of my head, I kept kind of hearing this voice of like, well, what do you want to write now? What do you want to write now? And I constantly came back to the mystery, like the story I had to tell was serious. The story that I want to tell is fun and light, because my entire early reading experience were these fun escapes. And I also kept telling myself, like, well, you can't do that. Like you're doing public policy. You're in DC, like advocating for Alzheimer's care and research and funding. You cannot write a cozy mystery. But that voice would just not shut up. So finally, one weekend, my husband and I were hiking in the Columbia River Gorge. I was living in Portland at the time. And this whole idea for a mystery story just came all at once. I saw a young woman wearing a pink coat, kind of like yours in the back. So cute. And she was with this group of these like 5 burly hiker, like, you know, they were truly like these trepid outdoorsmen. And she was wearing pink head to toe, like pink boots, pink coat, pink hat. And I had to know, like, who is she? How is she connected with this group? I like to say that I followed her up the trail. My husband would tell you I stalked her up the trail. I just needed to know her story. I never found her again. But we were at Angel's Rest. Is anybody familiar with Hood River at all? We were at Angel's Rest, which is this like 2,000-foot peak. And when you get to the top, it's pretty sketch. Like you're up above the Columbia River, but there aren't any guardrails or anything. And so I thought, like, I wonder what would happen, like, if somebody just pushed somebody else off the top of Angel's Rest. That would kind of be a clever way to murder somebody, because you could say that they fell, right? So I came back home with this whole vision of this story of this young woman in pink, who was a wannabe hiker, and that ended up being my first book, which ended up being published like a year and a half later. And at the time that I published that first mystery, I thought, okay, well, I'll write one mystery. This will be great. I've wanted to write a mystery. I'll try my hand at it. And, you know, then maybe I'll be done with that. Like I'll have scratched that itch a little bit. And much like reading mysteries, once I sort of had a taste for writing them, then it just really began to steamroll, and the body count has continued to climb and to climb and to climb. My first mystery was titled Scene of the Climb, and it is set in Portland at Angel's Rest. And I was under contract for 3 books for that series, because in traditional publishing, they like to buy these in series, in like 2 to 3 books to get readers hooked initially. And I hadn't yet started writing the second book in the series. I had just finished writing the first book, and my agent called and said, hey, do you like to bake? And I said, well, yeah, I love to bake. And he's like, okay, well, do you want to write a bake shop mystery? I'm like, well, I'm writing this other series. Like, I don't, sure, but what would that look like? He's like, well, would you want to write a bake shop mystery about a mother and daughter, and they like to bake and they live in a sweet, cozy town? And again, I have barely finished book 1. I'm under contract for 2 more books in a series. I'm a brand new baby writer. I don't really know what I'm doing. And I'm like, yes, yeah, I would definitely love to write another series. That sounds like a great idea. Let's do it. And he responds and says, okay, you have 2 weeks. Put together a 50-page book proposal with a series overview, an overview of the first 3 books in the series with titles, potential titles, and the first 30 pages of book 1. Great. Okay, yes, no problem. I will get back to you in 2 weeks. Let me get on that. So I started thinking about where I might set this mystery. And because I had already set this other series in Portland, I was wanting something that is like a cozy village vibe, because again, I think one of the other pieces of these style of mysteries is that they're often about connections. If we go back to Agatha Christie and her rules for operating, those rules of not having, you know, this act of God be the reason that the mystery is solved remain true today. But Agatha or Dorothy L. Sayers, they probably would be semi-cozy today. There are a lot of differences in that style as the mystery has evolved. In those early Agatha, Miss Marple, Poirot books, you have a bevy of suspects, lots of suspects. Not always a lot of character development about them. You know, it's a lot of first names. You have darker murders. They're a lot bloodier than today's modern cozy. And you don't have as much focus on the setting. They're all set in these beautiful villages, but you're not necessarily describing the village. The focus is so much more on the actual crime. If you fast forward today in this genre of cozy, you can pretty much find anything you can imagine. Do you want to read a cozy about knitting? Check, check. Do you want to read a cozy about a dog or a cat that solves the murder? Check. Do you want to read a murder about a baker? Absolutely. So the evolution of the mystery has been more on community connections. So we have these fish out of water sleuths, like a baker, or in my other series, I write about a brewer or, you know, an intrepid wannabe outdoors woman who are put in these scary situations. And then it's about them reaching out to their community and their community sort of wrapping them in, which is one of the reasons I think that they remain cozy today. So I sort of had all of that in the back of my head after I have agreed that I'm going to deliver a full book proposal and sample chapters in 2 weeks. And I started thinking about places that I had loved, and Ashland came to mind immediately, because since my dad was such, and still is to this day, a Shakespeare buff, I grew up coming to Ashland for Oregon Shakespeare Festival every summer. And I thought, like, oh, this is the quintessential place to set a murder mystery. So I came down for about 2 weeks, and I just spent 2 weeks stalking the town. Everywhere I went, I took my notebook. This isn't my notebook, but let's pretend it is, and a pen or pencil. And I would sit in Lithia Park and just watch people and watch interactions. And I would walk all over town. I would employ a lot of the same techniques that I was using during my speech therapy days to just really listen and like pierce out conversations. And I was in Mix, which is sort of where I imagine Tort in the Bake Shop Mystery Series would sit. And I was just really paying attention to the baristas and listening to conversations and everything. And this woman came in, and she was dressed immaculately and had heels on and jewelry and the whole thing. And she was definitely, you know, not kind of the casual Ashland vibe that we all know and love. And she cut the line. She just cut the line completely. I know, and I'm just kind of sitting in the corner, taking some notes and watching. And then she begins berating, and I do mean berating the barista. Her coffee was supposed to be 180 degrees, and obviously it was only 160 degrees. And which, how do you know? Do you have a thermometer in your car? Like, who are you, lady? It was the worst tasting coffee she'd ever had in her life. And she's going on, she's making a big scene. And I'm still in the corner with my notebook, and I write, well, you can die in a book. And she does. She becomes the victim in the first book, Meet Your Baker, in this series. So I have 2 pieces of information for you to tuck away at the end of this talk. Number 1, be kind to your baristas. And number 2, you never know if a mystery writer is watching or listening. Because we also get to exact our revenge on the page. So if you are mean and awful, I will gladly kill you off in a book. And I think that is another piece of the genre that's so unique, that we have this balance between this idea of, this warm atmosphere. We're in Ashland, we're baking, the community is all coming together and breaking bread. And then this horrific murder happens. And the murders in these tend to take place off screen. If you go back to Agatha Christie, I mean, there's a big body count in a lot of Agatha's books. And if you think about more modern, what am I thinking of, like CSI style, this style is completely the opposite. The murder is off the page. It's just kind of alluded to, but we're not going to spend a lot of time getting into the official crime zone, right? You have that balance, but I also think then we get to play out our shadow side a little bit when we're reading these. We get to imagine and be in that world that we're inhabiting. If there is a villain, they're going to be pretty villainous. They're going to be a little bit over the top in this genre, intentionally so, because as writers and readers, we get to live out our fantasy of someone has wronged us, and we're going to, exact our revenge either by stabbing them in a million different ways, or by seeing that they are brought to justice at the end of the books, which is one of the things that I really love about that. Another thing that has come up over the years that I have been writing is I have found that readers of this genre in particular spend a lot of time plotting ways to kill people. I have stacks and stacks of notes and emails from people who will send me suggestions of ways that I might kill someone off in a future book. I was at Paddington this afternoon signing some stock for them, and one of their employees ran up to me and said, "I'm so excited to meet you. I've been reading your books. Like, I'm thrilled to meet you, but I have a question for you." And I was like, "Oh yeah, feel free, like ask me anything. What do you want to know?" I thought she was going to ask about writing a mystery or something related to one of the plots. She said, "Can you please kill me in your next book? This is my name. This is how I want to die." I've scripted it all. She handed me notes on her vision of how she might want to be killed off in the next book. And, readers who will say like, "Oh, I was on a cruise and I realized like a great way to kill somebody would be to push them off right when you're in this." Yeah. So I don't think it's unique to me as a writer. I think it's unique to this genre that there are all these layers that readers get to experience in the modern mystery, which is this idea of a little bit of wanderlust. If we're talking about coming and traveling to Ashland, you're puzzling together the clues and you're getting to live out your shadow side a little bit, which is one of the things that I appreciate. Once I had come back from that trip to Ashland, and we have our horrible villain, Nancy Hudson, who dies a bloody death by homemade raspberry jam in book 1. I sent that sample chapter and proposal to my agent, and he sold it 2 days later in a 3-book deal. And he called me this morning to let me know that we've just signed on for 21 books in the series. Yeah, no, I mean, thank you. I think that speaks to the idea, again, going back to the idea that these are almost like a palate cleanser, right? You probably are gonna, well, how long does it take you to read one, Marcia? 2 hours?
I kind of spread it out a little bit.
Okay, yeah.
Because I'm gonna try to figure it out as they go along, and so I take notes.
You take, oh, I love it.
All these different ways to kill all these people that are reading.
Right? But readers can read them pretty quickly. And so one of the things that has been so interesting and humbling is that I also get a lot of email from readers asking, like, could you write them faster? I really can't. Like, I'm writing a lot of, I feel like I've written a lot of books in a 10-year span. I'm not sure I can write faster, but there's this whole other plethora of titles if you go to the library or bookstore that you can choose from. There's other bake shops, there's other books set in libraries, in any kind of place you can imagine. And then the other piece, I think, even with this lightness and this ability to go like, yes, okay, these are cozy mysteries, you might read them in a couple hours. The other thing that has been really surprising about my career is there's not a week that goes by that I don't hear from a reader who says, these books I've been taking with me to my cancer treatment. I've been reading these books to help me get through the loss of my husband. I've been reading these books through my divorce. I got an email this morning from a young brand new mom who's home with her newborn, and she's like, your books are like my saving grace. And I don't take that lightly. I feel really touched and responsible for that idea that in reading, we can provide a moment of light and joy and escape for readers. I had a reader who was wheelchair bound, and she said my outdoor series, like she felt like for the first time she got to go on all these physical adventures that she couldn't do. And so I think there's something to be said for that too, in terms of a genre and that is full of puns and completely unbelievable scenes in which the Ashland police would walk across the street and ask the pastry chef for some input on a crime scene, right? So again, it's another dichotomy of this balance point of, oh, wait a minute, yes, they're fun and light, but also in that it's an escape for readers, which I think is so great. I did not ever anticipate that the series would go 21 books and that I would end up writing multiple series, but it feels like such a gift to be able to do that. And once I was writing about Ashland for a while, we ended up moving here, dun, 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 which opened up a whole new world of possibilities. I am now at the stage going into, this next round of more books coming, that I don't know what's going to happen first. Am I going to run out of ways to kill people? Probably not, because, we can keep going. In fact, is everyone familiar with Midsummer Murders? It's a great BBC. Yes. Okay. If you need something to binge, there's like 40,000 seasons of the Midsummer Murders, and they're phenomenal. But I heard an interview a few years ago with the showrunner for that. And the BBC interviewer was saying, okay, it's been like 36 seasons. How do you keep the murder fresh? And his response was, we just keep making the murder more outlandish, like the crazier, the better. So like in one episode, they actually they have a pot and the victim gets planted upside down in like the giant pot. Which again, would that happen in real life? Maybe, we'll see. But I'm not sure if I'm gonna run out of ways to kill people or recipes, because in this series in particular, every book in the series has multiple recipes. So as a way to soothe her nerves and or as a plot device for Jules to kind of start working through all of the potential suspects, she has to head into the kitchen and bake up a souffle and then scurry back over to the crime scene and try to sleuth around a little bit. As the series has grown, I've been able to add more and more Ashland places and people and dogs into the series. We have a dog that's going to star in an upcoming one, because you may or may not know this, but dogs audition for roles at OSF. So that is going to, they do. That's going to be in the Halloween book that's coming out this summer. But because we are still following these rules that Agatha and Dorothy put into place in the 1930s, you need a finite number of suspects. They all need to be lying about something. They need to be hiding something. They need to be doing something nefarious. We need to constantly be shifting suspicion. When I'm writing a book, I start with the body. I always start with the crime scene, and then I work my way back. So I know what each suspect is lying about, hiding, keeping secret. It could be that, somebody's sneaking off to have Botox and they don't want anyone to know. But they're like in a dark scarf walking around town, acting suspicious. And they're not the killer, but we want the reader to think like, why is she in a dark scarf in an alleyway at 10 o'clock at night? So we need to constantly be shifting suspicion. And then our sleuth, going back to that very first thing that we talked about at the beginning, has to piece together all of those same clues as the plot develops. And so for Jules, when she's in the bake shop, that's just an easy way that she's like kind of doing this sensory active baking. And while she's doing it, she's piecing together. And then she's also giving the reader a clue of like, oh, that's right. The timeline there didn't add up, or, oh, that's right. That suspect said they were there, but someone else told us they were over at the bowling alley or, wherever it is. So I love that piece of the puzzle still of getting to figure that out and then finding ways to weave in the food amongst it. And then the last part of my process after I finish a book is to go through all of the food writing. So after I've done a first draft, I will go through and I will start layering in all of the food. I will make every recipe that's in the book 2 or 3 times. My neighbors usually at the beginning of recipe testing are excited to see me. By round 2 or 3, they're like, yeah, I think we're good. I think we've had a lot of pastry this week. And that's another point of differentiation from our historical mysteries that started it all. There were not these add-ons of food or, maybe a list of your favorite books in the end. Any sort of add-on is a new part of the modern mystery where readers are fully immersed in the experience of all of it so that you're getting this bonus content at the end. Yeah, that is in a nutshell, the modern mystery. I wanted to leave time for questions if people have questions, thoughts. I'm working on book 18. I just delivered book 18 in this series. The book 17, which is Catch Me If You Candy. It's going to be set, I know, it's going to be set during the Halloween parade in Ashland. It's going to involve a gaming group who's playing Mahjong, and they find a suspicious tile and a dragon in costume, and then lots of Halloween. And then I'm working on book 18, and we'll start book 19 soon. So there's a lot more murder to come in Ashland. Check your alleyways. Send me your ideas also, for sure. If you have thoughts on how else to kill people. Yeah. Does anyone have questions? Yeah.
Well, Melissa Anderson is here, and I wondered if you were planning something around the Lyonnaise bread baker.
Oh,
Bread baker.
oh, tell me more.
It's French.
Okay.
Very French.
Very
Well,
French.
like actually French.
Yes, okay.
A real French. Yes.
A real French bread, okay.
Yes, a bread baker, not pastry.
That's okay.
And because in France, they're like different words.
Right.
Like, so he's a bread baker. Saturday chocolate bar.
Saturday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other question is, if you were to cross bread and pastry with him, would that be murder worthy? Would you get like a death stare of some kind?
Well, pastry, he can appreciate good pastry.
Okay,
What
okay.
he doesn't like is bad bread.
Bad bread.
So in fact, like I get in trouble if I buy industrial bread.
Oh.
Like Franklin's like, no.
Yeah,
Like,
no.
He's like, what is that? I'm like, nothing.
See, we have a plot right now. Where else can we go? We've got a little hint of the title with bad bread. That's a good launching point. Yeah, see, this is how it starts. Yeah, I love it. Any writers in the mix? Yeah,
Mostly journalism. I've written some short stories.
I love it.
I'm too ADHD to complete any of my novels.
Yeah. Well, my first series, she is a wannabe journalist, but in that story, journalism is like newspapers are shuttering their doors. And like we talked about before, like that really happened here. Yeah. I think it's interesting because I wrote that series in 2012. And then fast forward to today, like newspapers are just continuing to shrink, but we need journalism in the world so much. So, yeah.
We're becoming podcasters.
Podcasters. Yeah. Yeah. Hence Only Murders in the Building. Yeah. There's a whole podcasting mystery, a cozy coming out. There's a yeah. There's a soul food cozy. Vivian Chen has an amazing cozy set in a noodle shop. Abby Collette writes an ice cream series that's set in Ohio. I mean, like, you name it, we got it. Yeah. Did you have a question though? Sorry.
Oh, I was just wondering if you'd heard of Karen Amoratico from here, who baked a pie a day for a year and gave it away.
Yes. Yes. I not only heard of that, of Karen, she baked a cake for my husband's birthday. I won one of her cakes at a library auction, a Friends of Library auction. And that was the first year that we were in Ashland. When we moved to Ashland, I was a little nervous because I had been writing this, I think I was 8 books into the series at that point in time. And I thought, I've created this version of Ashland that I know is an amalgam, right? But I think the thing about Ashland that felt so strong, and what I heard from reader feedback was, oh, I love the sense of community. I love how welcoming it seems. I love that neighbors seem to know who each other are, that you would walk down the street and wave and like actually bump into someone you know. And I thought, I have created this idyllic vision of a town, and we're going to move there, and it is going to be nothing like my vision. And the opposite was true. Like, the first day that we moved in, Alan, our neighbor across the street, came over and invited us to dinner. Another neighbor brought us cookies. Another neighbor brought us a pie from Karen. I mean, it was just like this. And no one knew who I was. They were just, yeah, that was part of the community. So yes, but I would love at some point in time to write a whole book just around that, because I feel like one of the pies could be poisoned.
Notes in it.
Notes in a pie. Yes, yes. See, notes in a pie. I love it. I wrote one of the series, and I have a giveaway. I don't know how we do this. It's just going to be fastest hand up. Okay. I wrote a book that is set at SOU, and I just got a bunch of free audio copies. So yeah. Does anyone know which book was set at SOU? Oh, it's in the fall. It involves a museum heist. It's at the Schneider Museum. Yes, it is. Well, I'll give you that much. That's fine. Yeah, that's good. Bake, borrow, and steal. It is set here at SOU. The library gets mentioned because she's on campus walking around. In this one, there is Shakespeare's first folio has come to Ashland, and Ashland is getting the premiere of getting to see his first folio because of the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, and it goes missing. And then, you know, murder ensues. Okay, that's coming to you. So I'll give that to you at the end. Big bar and still. Yeah. I am sending her up to Mount Ashland in book 18. I think one of the things about writing a long running series that is a challenge is, how do you keep it fresh? Not just the murder fresh, but how do you make sure that the story is still engaging? Because I didn't go into mystery writing thinking that I was going to write a series, more than one book to begin with, let alone multiple series and long running series. I didn't really think through character chart notes. So if anyone's thinking of writing a mystery, like at the very beginning, really like make a series Bible, because to this day I'll be like, what color are those? What did I say? Like, who did what when? That's a problem. That's a problem with writing a long running series. And then the other balance is how much backstory I give for readers who've come along on the whole series. So you're like, yeah, come on, I know that, versus readers who will pick up book 16 and start a series at book 16. So they need to have some baseline and familiarity with what's going on. That's one of my bigger challenges, I would say now. And I am shocked, stunned by how many readers read a series out of order. Does anyone here read out of order? Oh, that's murder worthy. That's super impressive. I'm just kidding. But I am if I start a series, I read from book 1 all the way through, but I would say probably at least a third, if not more than that, of my readership will say, oh, I picked up the series at book 10, or I picked up the series at book 12. And then I've gone back and started reading earlier books, which is just amazing to me. But yeah. Yeah.
So do you ever find yourself breaking Dorothy Sayers' Agatha Christie rules?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't think I have broken the rules yet. I'm withholding the right that maybe at some point I would. But I do feel like because I was such a connoisseur of mysteries growing up and all through my young adulthood, that I don't want to be cheated as a reader. So the same responsibility I feel for the readers who say, I took your books with me to get through chemo, I feel to readers that I don't want to have a suspect who shows up 120 pages in who we don't know. So I take that part seriously. But I have had two ideas. There's one particular character who I want to kill off. And they're a recurring character. So that's kind of another rule, that you're not supposed to kill off anyone who's part of the bigger subcast. It happens in Midsummer Murder all the time. So, I mean, you know, I feel like I could break the rule there. And I've had multiple bodies in a couple books. I did one book where she went back in time and was solving a crime in the past and today. And that breaks the mold a little bit, but that's about as rebellious as I've been. But who knows? It might all, I mean, book 19, we might just throw out, I'm not going to pledge my allegiance to Dorothy and just do my own thing. We'll see. Yeah.
Do you read a lot of other cozies by other people?
Well, that's a good question. I don't read as many cozies anymore. I think my early reading career, and until I started writing mysteries, my husband's in the back, he's nodding. My husband and son would just buy me, like that would be my birthday, Christmas present, you know? But what no one warned me about is once you start writing them, it's pretty hard to read them because I'm too worried that someone else's plot is going to get in my head inadvertently, or I do spend so much time with that plot wanting to get that right, that then if I'm reading them, I feel like I'm breaking the plot apart more and I'm not just enjoying it. The good news is I am a voracious reader. I read everything. I'm in 4 book clubs. I read sci-fi, I read a lot of literary fiction, I read historical fiction, I read nonfiction. So I'm still reading a ton, but usually I save mysteries for when I'm not writing myself. Like I'll save those for a break. And I'll read darker mysteries, true crime, thriller. Thriller, if anyone doesn't know this, is the opposite of a mystery. We know at the get-go who it is, and we're trying to track them down. So that's a different plotting device that I can, I don't feel as like in conflict, or that I might like get too cerebral and be like, oh, ooh, how did they do that? Yeah, yeah. But I do read a lot. Yeah, anything else?
One more question?
Yeah, well, thank you all for coming. Yeah. So fun to be here. Thanks for inviting me.